Can a wholesale drug importation program like the one the federal government is proposing comply with track and trace? I'm Shabir Safdar. I'm the Executive Director of the Partnership for Safe Medicines, and I'm here to talk to you about this specific topic. So first of all, there can be no compliance with track and trace. Canada has no track and trace system. So any medicine we buy from a Canadian wholesaler has been handled by any number of vendors. And no matter what they promise us, which is of course not very useful since it's not illegal for them to lie to us, the way they have no way of actually proving that it hasn't been sold and resold by half a dozen vendors. The difference between medicine in America and Canada is that medicine made for the American market has a barcode on it at the time it is manufactured on the manufacturing floor. Canadian medicine does not have that. And there are no laws that say it's illegal for a Canadian citizen to lie to us about how many people have handled that. There's also no rules about authorizing trading partners. This is going to come up later, but the big issue here is that we do not have an ability to regulate vendors in Canada effectively at all. The Healthcare Distribution Alliance has a great infographic describing all of the different steps and problems between track and trace medicine in the US and track and trace in Canada, which doesn't exist. In particular, what you're going to see in the proposal that the federal government is got on the table is that they're going to create a giant exception and basically stick a barcode sticker on any medicine that enters the US from Canada to try and make it work, but they're not actually going to make it comply with track and trace. Experts in track and trace have already talked about this. They've simply said there is simply no way to alter the Drug Supply Chain Security Act or track and trace to enable importation without undermining the entire thing. So that's pretty clear. You know, we've seen people try this before where they tried to regulate pharmacies and wholesale distributors in Canada. It didn't go well. Minnesota tried this under Governor Tim Pawlenty, and they actually went up there for a pre-announced inspection, not a surprise inspection, but they told them they were coming, and they found enormous problems with a vendor up there that was dispensing medication to Minnesota patients. And they really possess no legal ability to actually make them comply with what they considered reasonable pharmacy safety rules. And the FDA cited Governor Pawlenty for this problem, saying that there was nothing that they could do. They had no regulatory authority and they should really terminate their program. We've also seen this in the Canadian wholesale market. We had this vendor who in Canada was indicted in 2014, and he had a Canadian wholesale pharmacy license as well as a retail pharmacy license and a pharmacist license personally. And in 2014, he and many of his coworkers were indicted for their scheme to sell counterfeit and misbranded medication into America. And the problem is that he simply refused to come to court. So imagine if under this proposal that the federal government has got on the table, that the vendor in Canada does something wrong and we indict them and they simply refuse to come to America. Well, that's a problem because we need to hold people responsible for their actions. And if they don't fear coming into court to answer for crimes that they commit where they endanger American patients like this person did and make money from it, then we don't really have any way to actually compel them to keep Americans safe. And we actually never brought him into court. He actually just never left Canada. He waited us out, and 4 years later, the Department of Justice gave up and gave him a plea bargain that gave him no jail time for this crime. So that's really, really disturbing. We have track and trace for a very good reason, and you can read it if you read Dangerous Doses. It was about how there was a nationwide counterfeit problem that hurt a lot of people that came out of the unregulated wholesale market in Florida, where there was no way to track medicine through who had held it and who had bought and sold it. And so we've spent years getting to the point where we've got this track and trace system that was passed in 2013 and will complete its rollout in 2023. The last thing we should be doing right now is undermining it. The White House should really withdraw its Canadian drug importation proposal. For Shabir Safdar at the Partnership for Safe Medicines, I thank you for your time, and I hope you will comment on the proposal at the federal government.